Hi, and welcome to Class 1.1 of HealingPath, the class for adult children of alcoholics. My name is Scott, and I'll be guiding you through this class. If you haven't already done so, please go back and listen to our introductory class. There's some great initial information in there that'll help you to understand the larger class. Also, as I said in the first video, if you feel like you're going to be hurting yourself, if you feel like you might be at risk of doing yourself harm, I want you to please go to suicide.org and call a professional. This class will give you some great information, but if you feel like you're going to hurt yourself, it's time to get a little bit more help. So the goal of this first class, Class 1.1, Belief or Fact, is around the topic of alcoholism itself. It's something that we all feel like we understand pretty well, but what I found in the years that I've been working on families in recovery is that there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of information that people might think is cold hard facts, but the truth is that it more is a belief system. And at the same time, there's some things that people aren't quite sure about, but science is pretty well dealt with. And so rather than giving you a really hard look at things and telling you what to think, the goal of this class is just to ask you some questions and give you an opportunity to think for yourself whether or not you believe it's a belief or a fact. And then I'll give a little bit of my perspective as well. So let's jump right in. So the first one, belief or fact, alcoholism is a choice. So think about that for just 1 second. So for this first one, alcoholism is a choice. There's pretty good science behind this that would make me think that this is really just a belief. I know that there are people that believe this very strongly. The science would seem to indicate, though, that at least for some people, their bodies crave alcohol, and whether or not they have a second drink, their ability to control that is pretty limited by their body and their reaction to alcohol and the way that their body processes it. Actually, if you're interested, there's been research on whether or not people that have alcoholism sort of in their system, whether or not they actually get more sugar and they synthesize the alcohol differently to make it sweeter in their system. But I think that this one probably would go into the belief camp. The next, alcoholism is a moral failing. So think about that for a moment. So again, I think there are some people that believe this very, very strongly. I would tend to put this more in the fact camp. I would keep this in the belief camp. I'm sorry. This isn't a fact. I would say that this is probably more of a belief. Morality, ideas of morality aside, we know that there's a lot of science behind alcoholism, and I think the danger with this belief is that it puts all the blame on the individual. And I know there are some traditions that call alcoholism the failing, but I think that this pretty strongly goes into the belief camp and not the fact camp. Next, an alcoholic is a falling down drunk who can't keep a job. So I would pretty strongly put this in the belief camp. We know that there are all types of alcoholics in the world, and some are falling down drunks who can't keep a job, sure, but many of them have jobs or are in school or live otherwise highly functioning lives. And so if you look at the functioning of a person to decide whether or not they're an alcoholic, you're missing a lot of it. And that's actually been one of the dangers, is that some people will say, well, he can't be an alcoholic because he goes to work every day and he plays with the kids and he does other stuff. And those two things are separated out. Whether or not a person functions every day is separate from whether or not they're an alcoholic. Okay, next. Alcohol is the cause of alcoholism, belief or fact. Okay, this is a tough one because according to some, and even in the scientific community, I've seen that this is established as a fact. But I've seen others say that it's really purely a belief, and so this one has me stumped. I know that without alcohol in their system, people can still display the characteristics and the attitudes of an alcoholic, and they can still do certain things. And I know that the genetics and the biology, the physiology of alcoholism are present in people regardless of whether or not alcohol is. So that's one to think about. Next, quitting drinking for an alcoholic is a question of willpower. So belief or fact. So I'd say that this falls into the belief category because willpower, oftentimes the strongest desire, the strongest will in the world, can't overcome the biology, the physical need for a drink, and the psychology of it. Just the complexity of this disease makes it pretty tough for people to all of a sudden just turn off the desire to drink. So I'd say that this one pretty firmly goes in the belief camp. Alcoholism is an older person's disease. So belief or fact. So I'm going to say that this is very much just a belief, and it's actually a very incorrect belief. Alcoholism spans all age spectrums. It goes from the youngest to the oldest, and everything in between. So there's nothing to substantiate this. This is a pretty old-fashioned one. And this next one, pretty controversial. Alcoholism is caused by gremlins, belief or fact. So this is obviously tongue-in-cheek, very much a joke. But I think the overall idea that there is so much misinformation on the internet around what causes alcoholism, and I've seen all sorts of explanations, including, it's just trauma in childhood, and the list goes on and on as to what causes alcoholism. And obviously gremlins is a joke, but the larger idea that there are so many things out there that are trying to give you bad information, and usually because they're trying to sell a book or sell something. It's really worth thinking about those things critically and doing a bit more research. Okay, so next, alcoholism is a complex disease of the brain, belief or fact. Well, I really want to put this into the fact category, and I believe strongly that science is behind that idea. I know that some people don't believe this is true, and so it's hard for me to say with all absolute certainty that it's a fact, but I'll say that all the scientific support in the world would strongly indicate that yes, it's a fact. We know that alcoholism is an incredibly complex disease. It's a brain disease, and it's a tough one. It's a tough one for people to figure out. Next, alcoholism has a strong genetic component that is little understood, belief or fact. So this is pretty strongly a fact. Again, if you accept that it's a complex disease of the brain, it's very much genetically indicated. And I think one of the complexities is that we don't know all the genetic markers, so we don't know all the reasons why different parts of the body and different parts of our genetic code make some people alcoholics and others not. So, you have two kids from the same family, and one of them grows up to be an alcoholic and the other does not, even though both were drinking. Or one just makes the decision never to drink. So what goes behind that, there's a lot of genetics, and it's very complicated. Next, belief or fact, alcoholism runs in families. So I would want to put this strongly into the fact category. There is an amazing amount of evidence that would support the idea that alcoholism does in fact run in families. Having an alcoholic parent makes a person 4 times more likely to be an alcoholic themselves, and we know that most alcoholics, a majority of alcoholics, have alcoholism in their background, their family background. So I would say that this pretty squarely goes in the fact camp. Okay, belief or fact. There are many types of alcoholic. No one stereotype fits all. Belief or fact. And so research is starting to really suggest that this is fact. And so this chart shows an indication of what one system believes. And so they've got 5 categories of alcoholic. Okay, next, belief or fact. Not everyone calls it alcoholism. So belief or fact. So this is an interesting one because I would say that this has to go into the belief camp. Or actually no, this is the fact camp, in that some people don't ever call it alcoholism. It is, for some people they call it substance abuse or alcohol abuse, or alcohol use disorder. There's other terms, there's clinical terms. And so in some clinical settings, when you go in, people will really not tend to call it alcoholism at all. Whereas for example, in Alcoholics Anonymous, the term alcoholism has a very, very specific connotation. It means something very specific to people, and you have I think there's an idea that if you go into that environment, you're going to be subscribing to that idea. But in a different clinical environment, they might not call it alcoholism at all. I had one clinician say to me, "I don't know what alcoholism is. I have no idea what it even means." So it's hard when not everyone's even speaking the same language. Next, science does not know much about alcoholism. Belief or fact? Well, I would say that this is probably a belief, because some people very strongly believe that science has made huge advances in understanding alcoholism. From my perspective, we have made advances, but we still know very little. There's a lot of things that are so little understood. It strikes me that there's just an amazing amount of misunderstanding still, even in the scientific community. I think that we have a long way to go, especially in understanding the genetic markers. Some people who are addicted to or abuse alcohol can return to normal, healthy drinking. Belief or fact? So I think that this is pretty strongly a belief. There are some people who believe that once you're an alcoholic, you're never ever able to drink again in a healthy way, and that there's no possibility of returning to healthy drinking. There are others in the clinical community especially who believe that there's a term called harm reduction, where you can help train people who drink alcohol in an unhealthy way. You can retrain them to drink in a healthy way. And so if you go out there and Google harm reduction, you'll learn a bit more about some people's beliefs around the ability to minimize the impact. There's also some charlatans, some people out there selling the idea that, if you take some vitamins or do some other silly things, that you'll be able to drink normally. I think for children of alcoholics, the risk here is that we've seen the impact of alcoholism and the excuses and I'm just going to go back to drinking in a normal way. I'm only going to have one beer. For me, I would say that the risks of alcoholism far outweigh the potential of returning to healthy drinking. But I have to say that's just a belief. Next, some alcoholics go through delirium tremens or DTs after quitting drinking, while others do not. Yes, this is pretty much a fact, and as someone who's seen DTs several times in others, I can tell you that it is one of the circles of hell, both for the person going through it and the people watching, the family. If you don't know already, delirium tremens is just a state of extreme withdrawal in the system, and people who are going through delirium tremens will have hallucinations, and they can have hallucinations and paranoia and sweating and just on and on and on. It's really painful. So if you've never experienced, hope that you never will. And finally, alcoholism is not in fact caused by gremlins. So I just wanted to close out on a sort of a goofy note, because it's, again, the whole overall idea of this lesson, and hopefully it's come through, is there's a lot of beliefs out there, and there are things that you need to examine for yourself critically. And so part of what this class is going to do is help you to understand how you, as the child of an alcoholic, needs to play a very strong active role in your life and in understanding the disease and how it impacted you. And that means sifting through a lot of information and finding what you truly believe in your core, and finding out how that can help bring you to a place where you can heal. And so every time you see some information that you're not quite sure about, just think to yourself, is this a gremlin? Is this something that I can believe in, or does this seem like someone's just trying to sell me something? So that's the end of class 1.1. We are working to record the other videos, so I'll just keep going and get them up as I can. So have a great day, be safe, and stay healthy.